Hi, friend. Thanks for joining me for the next few minutes as my guest and I talk about overcoming the mountains in your life. My guest will share their story of God's move in their life, and I will throw in some wisdom along the way also. Sit with a cup of coffee and listen, or take me on your journey. I'm here for you. This is Moving Mountains with Melissa Montana. Thank you so much for joining me on Moving Mountains with Melissa Montana. Again, another incredible time together, but I'm super excited about this guest because he was a speaker on Global Leadership Summit. Of course, we all got excited and powered up about his words of encouragement and affirmation and our journey as leaders and walk with the Lord. But he personally has a story that's so incredible. He's a leader of an organization that's international. We're going to have him talk about that also. And I'm just so glad to have him along today. Mr. and Reverend Dan Owolabi is my guest today. Dan, how are you, friend?
I'm good. It is good to be here, Melissa.
Yay. What was that feeling? I haven't had a chance to talk with you since GLS. What was that like for that experience? Because we were all so inspired by you and your words and your story. Talk about
Mm.
that feeling.
Yeah, the Global Leadership Summit is a really unique event. Obviously it's got, 7,000 people in the room, and then it's got hundreds of thousands of people tuning in from all over the world, and it just
Yes.
keeps going. And so, you hear about something like that, and you know that there's an opportunity to make a really big impact when you get a chance to get on stage. But
Yeah.
actually being on the stage, oh my goodness, I've never felt so loved, so welcome, so warm. The audience was cheering. And
Oh,
I walked into it feeling like God had given me something to say, and I really wanted to say it well. And so that really kind of guided the moment, both wanting to help the people in front of me, but then also wanting to honor the God above me. So it was just a really good moment altogether.
thank you for that. Thank you for what you've done and what you've meant to all of us to be encouraged like that. Can we go back just a little bit at let's get to know Dan and your upbringing. I know you have this incredible story that you told about your sweet mama, but
Hmm.
just give us kind of a recap of where you came from, where you are today, and then we want to talk about where God has you moving forward because you've got an incredible story.
Yeah. So I'll give you the short version. So I grew up on the West Coast. My mom and dad were both Nigerian immigrants. The thing that's really unique about my story is that both of my parents were deaf, so neither of them could hear. And so coming to the United States and not being able to hear, there's a lot of different challenges that they work through in order to get to a place where they were both then college professors. Both of them, had a great career. Amazing parents in so many ways. My dad was a pastor on the side. There was just a lot of really incredible things happening. But I think what I saw was the ability to overcome challenges with persistence, but then also the ability to communicate to people who didn't inherently have your background. I mean, my mom and dad both rarely ran into anyone who were Nigerian and also deaf, and still had to
Yes.
find a way to build influence with people and to
Yes.
prove to people that, hey, I can help you in this university. I can graduate. There's a lot of different things they had to learn to do along the way. And it was really inspirational to watch it happen in real time.
I have to ask some of the obvious questions that I
Sure.
know other people are asking. You've been asked for years. How does that work? That both of your parents were deaf? You know, the questions that seem so obvious is like, well, how'd you learn to talk? How did you learn to communicate? You didn't have somebody,
Sure.
I mean, other people were talking, but in your home, how do you do that? And here you end up being this eloquent, amazing speaker and
Mm.
pastor and leader. I'm enthralled with that. Like, what happened?
I appreciate you saying that,
How?
Melissa. That's funny. I think so. It's a pretty simple way to explain it. You're asking a great question. So imagine, you would move to Mexico, for example. And I don't know if you have any children, but if you had children, you moved to Mexico, and let's say you had a child. Well, if you don't speak Spanish, and you can't teach your child Spanish, they're for sure going to pick up Spanish because they're just hearing it everywhere. It's called full immersion. And so that opportunity was there for me, even though my mom and dad couldn't communicate, verbally.
Mhm.
And everybody else did, right? Supermarket, church,
Yes.
school, TV, like watching TV from a
Sure.
young age, so all of those things happened on a regular basis.
Okay, that helps clear that up a little bit. I mean, help to
Yeah.
understand that because that's just your first thought of like, how did you do that? And
Yeah.
when did you realize, Dan, as a child, that your family was unique and different? I mean, it's
Hmm.
pretty obvious, but there's kind of
Sure.
a certain stage where you get to, you're like, wait a minute, a lot of other families aren't like this, and a lot of
Yeah.
them aren't in a family like I am. And
Hmm.
when you recognize that, what was that feeling, that understanding?
Hmm. Hmm. I've never had that question. That's a
Oh,
really good question, Melissa.
okay.
So here's what I would say. the moment I can remember clearly, it probably happened a few times before, but the moment most clearly in my memory is when I was in kindergarten. So my mom and dad, obviously they couldn't hear, but my mom was a little bit verbal. She could say some words.
Okay. Hmm.
And so, she would say things like, we would have breakfast and she'd say, hey, we're going to go and I'm going to serve you some oatmeal, but she would say OAT, which is like, OAT, right? Just oats. And so, hey, do you want some OAT for breakfast? I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. And so I grew up thinking like oatmeal was actually called OIT. And like that's what I thought it was called. And so like,
Sure.
when I was in kindergarten for the first time, the teacher said, well, hey, everybody, what do you like having for breakfast? And I was like, oh, I love having OIT. And they're like, what? And I'm like, OIT, And so those are the
Don't
moments where
follow
I'm like,
you.
yeah, yeah. Those are the moments when you realize like really clearly that the experience I've had at home is very different than all of these. There are like 25 other kids. None of them called
Right.
it OAT. And then it sort of opens up into the category in your mind. You're thinking, well, how many other things have we done that aren't replicated in other places around my community? And so that's really where I started to understand that there was two different spheres that I was living in.
That's good. Well, these are just interesting questions that I know someone else must be thinking, so I have to ask
So
you those things. I'm
that's
like,
good.
what is someone else thinking? So as you're growing up, what's this like? You're a teenager, then you get into your 20s. What's that trajectory for you moving forward in your dreams and goals, knowing that
Yeah.
you've been put in a unique lifestyle?
Yeah, yeah. So I talk about in my book, Authentic Leadership, I talk a little bit about the idea that I think early on, what I wanted to do is I wanted to create as much distance as I possibly could between sort of the perception of who I was and who I really was. Because I think what people saw me as was, and I grew up in a really small community, and we were the only black family, and for sure the only deaf family. And
Wow.
so, people then would see me and they'd be like immediately, oh, that's the black kid with deaf parents. Immediately that was my identity. And so went through a lot of sort of internal processing and some pretty traumatic events to get me to the place where I was able to experience and appreciate my background. My parents are deaf. That could be a challenge, just like Michael Jr. said on stage, or it can be an opportunity where you start to see, well, I can actually speak two languages and I can understand two different communities, and you start to see the benefits of it. And I also honestly just really started later in life, really started to pay more attention to communication and really started to think deeply about the power of words, what words can do, because I saw my mom and dad couldn't communicate verbally, but they yet spent a ton of time thinking about how they could actually get their ideas across to people in a way that made people really kind of pay attention. And so that dichotomy was really important for me.
Okay, so you see your parents parenting the way they do because
Mm,
this is what they have been given. How
mm.
did what they do for you and did for you? Did you have siblings too?
I did. Yeah, yeah. So brother and sister grew up with them. Yeah.
Okay,
Mm,
gotcha. So you have that going on. What did they do well that helped
mm,
you be a parent well today?
mm, mm.
Sorry, I didn't give you
Yeah,
pre-questions. I
yeah,
didn't have a
yeah.
pre-question either. I just came
Yeah,
to my mind.
that's good.
Sorry.
So a short answer, they had okay, here's what they did really well. They
Okay.
had they had really high expectations for themselves.
Nice.
Like they believed that they could do incredible things. And they would not let anyone tell them that because they were deaf or because they're immigrants or because they didn't have money that they couldn't do A, B, C, X, Y, Z. And so I remember watching my mom pray and plan and like just posture herself to the place where she actually some of the things she said when I was like 2 years old. We're gonna have a house one day. We're gonna own a house one day. We're gonna
Yes.
do it. And then actually literally watch that happen when I was in eighth grade and think like, holy cow, like these things actually can happen.
Yes. Anything's
And knowing,
possible.
yes, exactly. And so
Believing.
they have all the limitations. And I think to myself, well, shoot, if they can do that, then I have zero
Exactly.
excuses, right? And
Yes.
that's really what fueled me. It helped me understand the world is probably different than I think, and things are more possible than I typically imagine at first.
That's so beautiful. You did well with no preparation. See, you're good.
Oh, good. Good, good.
Okay, so let's address that young person that feels like they're in a family right now, but you don't understand. My dad's drunk. My mom's on pills. They're abusive. We don't have money. People see us a certain way. What do you
Mm,
say to that young person? Because you can say anything's possible. And the scripture says that with God, all things are
right,
possible. Not with
right,
man, but with God, all
right.
things are possible. But today, I don't have enough money.
Mm,
Today, I'm stuck in this family. Today, it doesn't look good, and I don't think God's going to pull me out of it today. How do you give them
Mm,
hope to hang
mm.
on?
Yeah, that's really good. So I would tell them two things. Well, I mean, faith in Jesus is huge. I
Everything.
mean, not only the sort of the
Everything.
salvation, I'm going to go to heaven, and that is an incredible gift of grace,
Yes.
but also the sense of value and purpose it gives you in today's daily life. And
Yeah.
so oftentimes we look in our circumstances and we look for validation or we look for hope from the people around us. Hey, tell me I'm good enough. Tell me I can do it. But when we start looking to Jesus for that, and this isn't just like church talk, it's like real. When you start looking to
Yes.
Jesus for that, then it doesn't matter what anyone else says. And so when God says, hey, move in this direction, you start moving and working hard, and he starts moving mountains and making things happen all
Come
around
on.
you. That is really key. And so you can go back in history and you can find over and over and over and over again, like presidents and professors and pastors who have come from very difficult situations by sort of clinging to Christ and keeping their eyes on what God called them to. They've really made a big difference in their community. It's not totally impossible. Happens all the time.
Amen. That's a good word. Somebody needs to hear that. A lot of somebodies need to hear that. So I'm glad that you said it, talking about moving mountains. I just
Mm.
know, Dan, that if we don't go through something in our life, how in the world are we going to minister to other people? How dare I think that I can go minister to people if I haven't been through some crap in my life? And so
Absolutely
let
right.
me, and I'm okay with that. But once you go through a few, and I'm saying this, if you're watching now or listening to this, like you're like, but this is really hard. You know what? You can do hard. You just don't
Mm.
want to. I don't want to.
That's right.
But
You
Dan,
can do it. Yeah.
nobody wants to, but a
Yeah.
lot of people, if you knew even all the story of Dan's life, and even
Mm.
if I shared some of that with you of my life, God has a plan and he
Right.
will see you and he promised he'd never leave you nor forsake you. So he's
Right.
not a tease. He's a gentleman. The Holy Spirit's a gentleman. So he's not going to make
Mm.
you do something, but he's going to lead you and guide you. With
Mm.
God, all things are possible. And that's why we say that. And that's why Dan can say that, because if you trust God and you totally surrender it to him, give it to Jesus. Man,
Right.
give it to Jesus and watch what he can do.
Right. Right.
In
Right.
all of this, Dan, you now have a
Mm.
family.
Mm.
Can you? I mean, we've skipped some years in there, and I know we could probably talk for 5 hours, and that would be
Right.
great. But tell us about your beautiful family now and where
Yeah.
you are, and then we're going to talk about your organization.
Sure, sure. So I have an amazing family. My wife and I, we were college sweethearts. We met
Oh,
like the first 2 days of freshman
really?
orientation at the university we were going to. And I played on the boys basketball team. She played on the girls basketball team. So initially, like we had a lot in common. I think what really synced the deal for me before I actually asked her to marry me or even started dating was that we were playing ping pong together just as friends. First time we ever played, and she smoked me.
Did she whoop
Like
you?
I mean, oh, she
I
whooped me.
love it.
And here's the thing,
Smoked you.
Melissa. Yeah, she whooped me, and then she didn't even feel bad about it. I think she like threw the
Oh, I
paddle,
love
and she was
it.
like, "Man, you need to get better, buddy."
Peace out.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
right, right. And I love that like fire. I love that ambition. I
Yes.
love that competitive spirit.
That's so
So
great.
yeah, we've been married for 17 years. Just celebrated our anniversary a couple days ago. We've got two beautiful daughters. One's 11, one's 8. And they do such a good job of handling my crazy schedule. They're just absolutely amazing. And we spend every like almost literally 7 days a week. I'm home for dinner. It's 6 o'clock.
Nice.
We spend 2-3 hours at night together. I mean, it's just really fun. We've got a great family life, so I enjoy it.
Okay, that is beautiful, and I love that. I like love your wife already. I haven't
Mm,
met her, but it's like I need to know her because I
she's
love her
good. Yeah,
fire. Like,
yeah,
go girl, tell her I can't wait to meet her. That's right.
yeah.
What's her first name?
Erica, Erica.
Erica. You tell Erica she's loved from near and far, and
Cool.
we are loving her already. Just for allowing, just says a lot about her allowing you to do what God's called you to do.
Yeah.
How important is that for someone that says I have a call on my life? And maybe my spouse's call isn't the same. But you still have to recognize that both of you have to do this together,
Mm,
separately but together, like
mm,
you're doing. Can you talk
mm,
to a spouse that's like, well, he's not doing what I want him to do, or she's not as supportive? How do you blend that together? Because I've seen it work well, like you all, and then I've seen other people. That's just the fight they have all the time. I'm like, this is not supposed to be a fight. If it's a calling on your life,
mm.
it wouldn't be a fight or somebody's not doing something right.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. So, Melissa, I think the best way I would characterize that is say that the best marriages are mature marriages where both individuals have grown closer to Christ, And so as they've done that, they've realized that the person that God has put them with is not them. Their call is different than our own personal call. And so first, that sense of disassociation, like let them lead their life, let them love Christ the way they know how to love Christ, and I will take care of the things that I need to do. That's the first step. The
Good.
second step then is to position yourself and say, okay, my job isn't just to pursue Christ as much as I can. That's the first job. But the other part of my job is to help them reach their full potential. So I need to do what I can as I'm calling, doing what Christ has called me to do. I need to do everything I can to make sure that they are living as clearly and as passionately as they can for the call that Christ has given them, which might be completely different than mine.
Yes.
And it is like I feel, and this is going to sound weird, but I feel very called to the work that I'm doing. And I feel called to work long hours. I love it. I feel called to travel around the world. I really love that. My wife, Erica, does not feel called to that. She does
Okay.
not want to do that. And that
Okay.
is okay because she's called to very specific things that it's really my job to kind of create an environment where she can be the very best she can be for God's grace and God's glory. So we both have that idea and we're like, okay, she's going to let me run the race that God's laid out for me and I'm going to let her run the race and we're both going to run it together.
Okay, we could go into a married session now, but we won't. So, but that's really good. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I can think of all these things that we need to bring up and talk about, but that's powerful to hear that. That's healing for some people that need to hear that. I also heard that you need to take time to dream with your spouse. If you can help your spouse's dreams come true,
that's it.
that's a mature marriage. That's a
That's
mature
it.
relationship. And
You
how do
got
you
it.
make your spouse's dream come true before your dreams come true? You
That's
know?
exactly right. And it's flipped most times. Most people get married because they're hoping their spouse will make their dreams come true. And then you're just sort of sucking the life out of your spouse so that they can make your own dreams come true. But
Yeah.
it's service oriented. You've got to flip it and say, hey, I'm here to do everything I can to make your God dreams come true. Yeah,
Right. If you're not understanding it, talk about it, but talk about it. Have the conversation. Have
that's
those
it.
conversations. Don't be afraid to talk with your spouse. Well, he won't listen or she's not paying attention. Then talk like adults. I love that you said a mature relationship and say, babe, we need to talk. Can we talk? Let's talk about our dreams and moving forward. So thank you
Mm-hmm.
for that. Appreciate that. Okay, talk
Great
about your
question.
organization, branches worldwide. I'm so excited about this. Tell us
Mm.
more. What's this all about?
Yeah, yeah. So Branches Worldwide really starts with the idea that, if you want to make a difference in a community around the world, right? You want to transform a community socially, spiritually, economically.
Yes.
There's a lot of different things that you can do. But what we found is one excellent way to do that is start with business owners, business leaders, people who have the influence in the community. They know the problems of the community. They have the funds to actually solve problems in the community. And so what we realized is that around the world, there are great entrepreneurs, executives, and owners who are doing incredible work, but they're doing it alone. And so
Mm.
what they need is support. And so we're an organization, we're a consulting firm that does two different things. Number one, we work with entrepreneurs in 18 different countries around the globe, really helping them build businesses so it blesses their community. That's our nonprofit side. And then we have a for-profit side that works with businesses here in the States, really helping them think differently about their culture, think differently about their products, so that it actually accelerates God's kingdom. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. And so it's a boutique consulting firm where we step in and actually ask a lot of questions and then help you sort of shift your culture so it's actually maximizing the opportunity that God's given you to influence your community with your company.
Okay, yay, that sounds so exciting. And what do you say to someone that says, well, how do I know if that's for me? Why do I need that? I'm my business doing good, love it, got a great team. Why do I need this?
Yeah. Well, I would say there's two different levels of Christian leadership, if you will. So I think what we've seen is there's let's say level one. It's where you're a Christian and you lead a business and you make some money and then you give it to the church, and you're like that,
Separate.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, right. Two different spheres. On the other side, we've seen people integrating them together, and we've seen people say, okay, God hasn't given me more than just finances to give. He's given me influence. He's given me employees. He's given me an opportunity to work with people for almost a third of their life as they're like working underneath my purview. When people come to work, they spend almost more time at work than they do really in any other place. God, what do you want me to do with these lives underneath me? How can I move them towards you? Maybe it's not overtly telling them, hey, you should be a Christian, but how can I create an environment that points people towards your kingdom? And then it goes beyond that. What about the products I'm creating? What about the services I'm offering? And all the things that I do, how can I point my business towards you? And what we found is a lot of excitement around people who say, I want to go to work for a broader purpose than just
Yes.
making cash. I want to make cash for sure, but I
Yes.
also want to make an impact. How do I do that? And
Mm.
that's where we come in.
Okay, so a story of someone that they came to you, weren't sure what to do with their business, and you taught them how to
Mm.
implement their values and their purpose that God has given them with their business. What was one of the results? Because I know you have a lot of them. Does one come to mind that you're thinking of, like, yeah, this one business that, put those principles into action, and now, boom, seeing God's favor?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you one. This sounds like kind of an obvious thing, but I'll give you one example. We were working with a business owner a while back who was really excited about his faith, obviously, and wanted to use his business to make a difference in this community, wanted to use his business to make a difference in the lives of the people who work there. But one of the things that happened on a regular basis is that he would talk about his faith over and over and over again. Like, hey, I'm just going to talk to people all over the place. I really want people to come to Christ. They're going to know about my faith, which is completely fine. You should be very public as much as you possibly can about it, being wise and smart with your influence, the influence you have. But what happened was the environment he was creating in his business was actually limiting his influence's potential. And the reason why is because he was so bad at running meetings. Like, people would leave frustrated, they would leave like angry, like he didn't cover, he doesn't, we had this goal here yesterday, now he threw it out the window and he's doing something else. And this guy
Oh,
was all over the place, right? And so
yes.
he was losing influence because he was leading poorly. And
Mm,
so instead of saying, hey, why don't you, put these Bible verses up, or hey, why don't you start with these values, which those are all things that we do, we
yes.
really started with the most obvious pain points.
Mm.
Run a better meeting. And
Ooh,
suddenly, like,
so
it's like taking the rock out of your shoe. Like, the pebbles are gone. People are like more comfortable. Like,
tough.
okay, like, I kind of like working here. I kind of like that guy because, okay, this feels like things are flowing. And
Yeah,
before you knew it, he had more influence then to actually speak truth in people's lives when they
so
needed it. They
good.
weren't always rolling their eyes at him whenever he wasn't in the room, right? So those are the things that oftentimes when you're a Christian in business, you don't realize are so important. But
Wow.
Christ talks a lot about, God talks a lot about excellence, like doing the best you can. Paul talks about this a lot, doing the
Yes.
best you can for his glory. That means leading really, really well. So you actually have a leg to stand on when you talk to people about Christ.
I love that. If you have values and character and you live that out in front of your team, that
Mhm.
matters. If you're honest and if you don't shoot people down in front of others, if you don't behind their back too.
Right, right. You
Okay,
don't at all.
let's be obvious. How about not at all,
Yeah,
And
yeah,
those kinds of things carry you, and
right.
you're setting yourself up for blessing then. You
100%.
can set yourself up for favor from God if you're doing the right things that you need to do. And so,
You got it.
ouch and amen. We got to have some ouch and amens in our life. So I appreciate
I like
your
that. I
words.
like that. Yeah,
You're,
and that's just one part of what we do. Our main thing, honestly, is really working with Christian entrepreneurs abroad, being in 18 different countries. That's a
yeah.
huge way to accelerate the gospel in places that maybe it would be a little harder. Obviously, working with U.S. businesses is a big part of what we do, but man, we love working with our international partners. It's a lot of fun.
That's so beautiful. And have you found that they have a chance then to, like you said, share the gospel in a way that is implemented through your work? And it's just sometimes just being Jesus is the best way to share the gospel. Doing good
Absolutely.
business, being honest, always being there when people need you. When you're doing business with someone, they're like, wow, we can always count on her. We can always depend on him because they're a man of his word. She's a man of her word. And those things work when people see that you are who you are through and through, not just trying to get a business deal. Be Jesus and
100%.
God will take up the slack.
100%. That gives me chills to hear you say that. That's so good.
I
Because listen, like when Jesus stood up and said in Nazareth, like, "Hey, I'm the Son of God." Like if he would have made, I mean, he was a carpenter, right? Carpenter, right? If he would have made bad chairs and bad tables, people were like, "This guy,
Right?
like he sold me crap like 3 months ago. Like I'm not really gonna listen." I mean, you got to be consistent in all that you do.
Yeah.
Integrity is everywhere. So, yeah.
I believe that we should be more about excellence and less about competition.
Mm, mm,
Competition makes you on the edge and like I'm going to get them or watch this. I mean, we have competition in us, which can lead to excellence. But if we're more concerned about being excellent and being impactful, I feel like you don't have to worry about competition because you
You don't
just
worry
win
about
when
it.
you're excellent.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
exactly right.
just win when you do the right things. So
You
just
do
do the
you.
right
Yeah,
things. So
exactly
that's
right.
why I love you and your heart so much. Like I resonate with everything you say. And I'm like, yes, I'm over here yelling, go
Mm.
team, go Roger. So this is so
That's good.
great. I love this time with you. I can't thank you enough. And I appreciate that. Can we end with someone that might be struggling in their company right now and they feel
Mm.
like, but I feel like I've tried everything. I really do love God and want to honor him, but I'm really struggling either the finances or the business or somebody on their team's just dogging them, bringing them down. Can you help them, please?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I would say that I would give two things. I mean, number one, I would say it's really important to believe that you're there for a reason. Oftentimes, and when you're at work, the level of joy and enthusiasm and encouragement that you want to see in the environment
Right.
isn't there, and you have to bring it every single day. That means people are trying to pull you down; they're moving in the wrong direction. And so waking up every morning saying, God, you have me here for a purpose and I need to be a light, even if I don't feel it from other people. That is a really important Christian leadership perspective, recognizing the place that you work can be a mission field just like anywhere else around the world. That's the first thing. The second thing is you got to get some support. You got to find people around you. If it's an executive coach, we offer that, or people at your church who are strong in their faith, but also strong in business. If you find those people, you've got to get those people around you so you have the energy and the courage to go into those tough places when you feel like you're being beat down. But regardless, you've got to see yourself as someone who's actually bringing the energy and bringing the change as opposed to waiting for the change to happen. You're assuming, hey, someone else is going to encourage me. Nope, no one's going to. You've got to show up every day ready to make other people feel good.
That's so good. And mic drop. Thank you very much. That's so good. Dan Owolabi, you are
Ah,
amazing. Thank you so much and telling us about branches worldwide. I know that might be an encouragement to people. We're going to put your information on my link so that people want to reach out, connect with your organization, find out more. They can do that. This might be an answer to prayer for somebody in their business, and they just need some coaching. They need somebody to stand beside them. So we know that God's using you. So we pray for God's provision to continue on your life, on your family, on your business, and your ministry. Thank you for what you're doing. And don't ever stop, brother. Just keep moving on. We love you.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Thanks,
Thanks
Melissa.
so
I
much.
appreciate you a ton.
Thank you. Thanks for watching or listening. Movie Mountains with Melissa Montana. Love you and appreciate you. And I'm here for you too if you ever need. God's got you, friend. He can move the mountain in your life too. And then there's something greater on the other side. Don't you ever give up. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this segment. There are many more to come. I hope you'll make this a regular spot in the months ahead to find inspiration and a bold faith to trust God. I want to thank my friends at Windows, Doors, and More in Fort Wayne, Indiana for their support of this podcast. I love that their values align with the messages heard right here on Moving Mountains.